Hi, I am Beth McDonough, the content director here at And Marketing, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time walking you all through what the Storybrand framework is and how we at And Marketing apply it to our clients and the work we do from foundational messaging all the way through website copy, through emails, social media, blogs, pretty much all content across the board. So, we are going to chat through this deck that we usually share with our clients when we onboard them and start this sort of foundational discovery work. So, we're going to talk a little bit about why story, exactly what the Storybrand framework is, dig into it a little bit more in depth. And I'm not there with you live, so we won't be doing the Q&A portion of this, but you can feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have about it. All right. So the bottom line for why story starts with the simple statistical fact that people are more distracted now than they have ever been. And I'm sure that comes to no surprise to anybody. So you can see a couple of numbers and stats right here. The average attention span has fallen from 20 seconds to 8 seconds. And when I have gone through these numbers, over the past several months, I like to point out that this stat is from, I believe, 2019, and that's pre-COVID. And so I don't know if studies have been done on this, yet, but I would put money on the fact that our attention span is now even shorter since COVID. And the average time on a website is less than 10 to 15 seconds. So most people are barely on a website long enough to read one sentence, maybe two max, before they make a decision to leave. And the average number of times per hour someone checks their email at work is 30. So because our attention span is so short, we are constantly just squirreling, right? We are just looking for things to do, checking email, picking up our phones, looking at Slack. So many people are working from home that, maybe the dog barks or a kid needs something. It's just full of noise and completely full of distraction. And so, story is the best way to catch somebody's attention during that little slice of time that you actually have it. So some more details on why story. People do not read websites anymore. They scan them. And that is indicative of the fact that most people are only spending 10 to 15 seconds max on a website before they make a decision about it. So even the people who stay a little bit longer than that, most people only read 28% of text on a website before they leave. So the bottom line for that is we have to make it super clear to whoever is viewing our content what product or service is being offered and why people should care about it, trust it, and choose it as a solution within a very, very small window and very short period of time. So this screenshot is from the homepage of Carvana. And this is a really effective example of using this framework because in the hero section, there's very little text, and the text that is on here, the header is the new way to buy a car. So immediately you can see how Carvana sees themselves as being different than everybody else who sells cars. And then underneath it, it's in white, so it's kind of hard to see, but it says buy online, get it delivered, love it, or return it. So you learn exactly what the process is and what you're going to get from them in less than 2 lines, right? Essentially. So you can read that in 10 to 15 seconds and fully understand what Carvana is and how they help people. And majority of people are going to be able to tell immediately whether that's a good fit for them and that's what they're looking for. The rest of the text on the homepage is icing on the cake, right? That's if you decide to dig in and you need reinforcements and you need more of that know, like, and trust factor that you're going to go through and consume the rest of the website. But everything you need is right at the top right there. And it's a really, really easy point to get across to people who are on the website. So the third part to this is that a more explicit, meaning a more clear message, is going to beat the competition every single time, regardless of the quality of the product or service. People are tuning out marketing because, well, number one, because of attention span, right? There's so much of it. Digitally, if you scroll through Instagram, every other thing you see is sponsored. People are getting their emails bombarded. We are seeing so much stuff all the time that it is hard to distill out what is important. And so the clearer your message, the more it's actually going to be able to reach that person because it's going to stand out among the clutter. Within the Storybrand framework, there's a lot of content from Donald Miller, who is the creator of this framework, about wanting to require the user to have to burn as few calories as possible to create that connection point, okay? So clear and explicit messaging and super concise messaging is going to require the potential customer to have to burn fewer calories in order to understand your offer and decide if they need it or not. The second reason people are tuning out marketing is because it's often way too self-promoting, okay? So studies show that 45% of consumers are going to unfollow a brand if the activity is dominated by self-promotion. So the more a brand brags about themselves, the more they're going to lose the attention and the trust of a potential customer. And that is because if you think about this like a story, and I'm going to spoil something that we're going to focus on here in a couple minutes, but in the story, your customer is the hero. And if you are promoting your brand too much, then that customer is going to feel like they've got competition for being the hero of their own story, and they don't like that, okay? So by having a clear message and one that is customer promoting, right, rather than self-promoting, you can more clearly get your message across and create a connection. And the key to that we have resonated with as a company is, like I mentioned, Donald Miller's Storybrand framework. And so this is based on the sort of quintessential hero's journey, right? And there are lots of different versions of this. This one is probably super familiar to you, okay? This is the one coined by Joseph Campbell, I believe. But you will, if you Google hero's journey, you're going to see some with more steps, some with fewer steps. But this is the one that we use for this framework because the Storybrand framework is tailored towards marketing, okay? So step one, you have a character, and you're going to see the rest of this content is uses Star Wars as an analogy to sort of like paint the picture, right, and tell you this story, because that is although not everybody is a giant Star Wars fan. I am, but not everybody is. It is a story that pretty much everybody knows, right? And it is also a story that follows the Storybrand framework, the hero's journey, to a T, right? It really, really closely follows it. But you see this everywhere in pop culture. Pretty much every, comic, epic piece of literature that has, remained popular throughout the years and taught in schools, every blockbuster film, it all follows this framework because it is a story formula that works every time if told clearly and consistently, right? So in this framework, the character, which is the hero, is always your customer. And I find when I'm working with clients that this switch is the hardest one to flip for companies, because whether they realize they're doing it or not, they're putting themselves and their brand in the main character hero spotlight more than they are doing that for their customer. So that is a really big adjustment that has to be made and can require some difficult conversations of pointing out examples of that before that muscle, starts to build and starts to switch over. So the character, slash the hero slash the customer has a problem, it always has to start for a problem, because no one buys anything or invests in anything or does anything without the motivation of trying to fix something or solve something or relieve pain, right? We're always trying to get from A to B, and B is always better than A. And there's always an obstacle in between. That's our motivation as human beings. So there's always a problem. And then a guide enters the picture to help fix that problem. The guide is the brand. The brand is the wise guide who helps the character solve the problem by giving them a plan, whether that is the physical journey, right, in a film, whether that's a set of skills, tools, a map. In a client scenario, it's going to be their product or service, their solution, right? That the way they do things is going to be the plan. And so when they are handed the plan from the guide, they are called to action, right? Start with us. Take this journey with us. Buy this product. Buy this service. Take this training. Get this demo. Here's what you need to do. Here's the action you need to take to reach point B, to reach your destination. And when you're painting a picture of that destination, they have two options, right? Accept the plan, take the action, and find success. That's the happy ending, right? That is what the end result of working with them or buying their product or using their service is going to look like. Or you have the other fork in the road, which is avoiding failure. That is, the failure needs to be what would happen if they did not accept your plan. Okay. So different people are motivated by different things. And that's why it's important to show both. Some people are motivated by positive incentives, right? Here's what you get. Here's the awesome life you'll have. Here are the great results you'll have if you choose this. Some people are motivated by fear of getting a bad thing instead of the reward of getting a good thing, right? So you also need to put some risk involved there. If you do not do this, here's what might happen. We don't use fear tactics, but there needs to be a little bit of risk involved too. So that is an overview. These following slides, and I believe, I didn't check with Tina before offering this, but I'm sure we can send you a copy of this deck so you can go through it yourself. But the following slides go a little bit deeper into each of these elements of the framework. So there are some explanations and some quotes from Donald Miller in here and some questions to consider if you are talking to a company about each of these elements of the journey, right, of the framework. So for a character, we want to think about who exactly they're targeting, who their audience is, and what they want. What do they want when they go to someone's website? What do they want when they get on Facebook? What do they want when they're looking for help? What is their deepest, darkest desire, right? We talked about going from point A to point B and getting happy ending, getting that success. What is that end result they're looking for? And then we have the problem. The problem is also known as the villain. And so in a problem, there are always three layers. The first two, the external and the internal layers, are the ones that we talk about the most in marketing materials, right? So external is surface level, and that is usually what gets someone looking for a solution in the first place, aka what gets them like frantically typing something in the search bar in Google in the middle of the night, okay? So that's going to be really cut and dry for some businesses and not so obvious for others. So, an external problem could be something as sort of intangible as overwhelm or time, right? Not enough time in the day, stress, overwhelm. Something more cut and dry might be a catalyst event, like you're a cybersecurity company and the external problem of your customer is in a B2B sense, all of my customer laptops got hacked. Okay. That would be an external problem, because that is going to cause someone to go looking for help to fix that problem or to prevent it from happening again. The internal problem is what's below the surface. And so that is what people are truly looking for help with and what is going to impact their decision making. So it is going to be what keeps them up at night, what they are worried about, right? When that catalyst is not occurring, when that itch isn't actively itching, right? What is that underlying thing that's constantly like nagging at them in the back of their minds all the time? That's the internal problem. And we want to speak to that pretty frequently too, because we want to remind them that they're worried, and we want them to say, oh, yes, that is how I feel, because that's a connection point. The philosophical, we don't talk about as much, but it is sort of like a reinforcement statement. And so it's usually something that the hero or the character or the customer believes should or should not be true. It's something super fundamental. Like, for example, marketing shouldn't be this hard, right? Or I should be able to get grass stains out of my pants, or I should be able to have a computer that's safe from hackers. You can go on and on and on, okay? So I'm spending most time on those, the character and the problem, because those are the two most important. The rest of these we'll go through a little bit more quickly. The guide is you, your brand, your business. Well, not you, the FCMO, but you as in the client you're working with, okay? Like I mentioned, that's a really big paradigm shift for a lot of businesses. And so the key here is to have them focus on empathy and authority and how to show each. So if we're working on building the know, like, and trust factor, a lot of that is going to happen right here, especially the trust factor, because the hero needs to understand that they are understood, understand that they are understood. They need to feel understood, and they need to feel like they are in the right hands. They're in experienced hands. They're in the hands of a business or a person who has fixed this problem for others. And so, empathy statements are, we know how it feels because our people have been there, or I understand this because I went through this. And then authority is going to be quotes, stats, testimonials, logos of other, clients or customers that would carry some weight, right, with the hero. And then the last couple steps are the plan. And this is the map. This is the journey. These are the steps. The big thing here to remember is that the plan needs to be as easily understood and as short as possible. Ideally 3 steps, 5 steps maximum. Even if it's a little bit more complex behind the scenes, the user, the customer, the person reading the material or watching the video or consuming your content needs to feel like it's doable, like it's easy to follow. Talking about the calories again, right? They shouldn't have to burn a lot of calories trying to figure out how to get started, because the more daunting it feels to start, the less likely they are to actually take action. And then the other part of the plan is removing some of the fear and the risk. So that is thinking about the objections that your hero might have to taking those steps and to working with a company, and reinforcing why they don't have to have those fears, especially if you have sales calls that usually fall in between the marketing and the closing of a deal. Start to reassure them about some of those things that might normally come up during a sales call, so they don't even have to object to those things. So whether that's price, whether that's giving them some kind of money back guarantee, some kind of way to reassure them that they don't have to be concerned about taking the next step. So this next one, I think we already covered that. Once you give the plan, then you have to give them an action statement. And this is really important because a lot of clients we work with do not give clear enough calls to action, A, or B, they don't provide any at all or frequently enough, right? You have a blog post or You have to scroll really far down on your website before you're being asked to do anything. People aren't going to take action unless you ask them or tell them to take action. If you don't tell them what to do, they will just leave your website. So the two kinds of actions that we want to have in pieces of content are primary and transitional or secondary. And the analogy that we love is you have the marry me call to action and you have the date me call to action. The marry me is also called the cash register button, right? That's the enroll now, sign up, buy now, schedule a call. Those are primary calls to action. The secondary or transitional is for the folks who are not ready to make a commitment of that level yet, but still want to get to know you better. That's the dating call to action. So we want to make sure those are all over the place and everything that's put out into the world. Otherwise, people aren't going to know that they're supposed to take any action at all. And then this last step, and these last two steps are pretty self-explanatory. These are the failure and success sort of forks in the road at the end that I explained. So consider how a hero's life would be unchanged or worse if they don't take that step or follow that plan. And then in the opposite, how they will find success if they do. Okay? So I think we are at the end of the deck. And I promised Tina this would be 15 to 20 minutes, and we're already over that. So I will finish by saying that when we first started applying this framework, it was primarily foundational work when we worked with clients whose websites we were doing, because a lot of this guidance from Donald Miller is about applying it to homepages and to websites and like sort of the flow of information that creates a story that connects with the reader. So sort of like the fact that you should have certain content in your hero header, and then the next step should be the problem and how the flow of information should go on a website. That is a must. But what we have also found since then is that using this framework is necessary for almost every client we work with, even if they need something as simple as updating their LinkedIn profile, or just an email campaign, or just a couple of blog posts, or some ads run. Whatever it is, we have learned that we have far more success when we take them through this exercise and have foundational messaging. Because then whether we are executing content or whether they are, there's consistency in the points that are getting across, in the problem, in the solution, in the identity of the hero, in the company as a guide. Those pillars are able to be pulled out and applied to every single piece of content that is created, which creates consistency in the content and applies the same story across the board and makes a brand super recognizable. And story works. It pulls you in faster. It grabs attention. It evokes emotion. It creates connection. It builds relationships. So no matter what kind of work we're doing with a client, we find that we always want to start by doing this work, because if we don't, I've never experienced a time where we didn't regret it down the road. And the output of this can be a formal messaging document with a value prop, all that good stuff. And then it can also be, I'll show you an example just really quickly. It's also a brand script, right? So we use that formula, the Storybrand framework. I work with clients to complete a document. Here's a finished one. It's ours, so I'm not showing you anything I'm not supposed to. This is the one we've been working on for redoing our messaging. The blue is our answers, the black are the questions. So I take clients through a process to create this document that walks through sort of the cruxes of the Storybrand framework, so that when I go to create content, or anybody on the client's end goes to create content, or plan a launch, or anything where they're thinking about what kind of message they want to get across, all of the information is here. You have the external obstacles. You have the internal obstacles where you can talk to them and say, we know you're overwhelmed by the number of marketing tactics available. You can just pull from this when you are creating content to put out in the world. When clients are doing that, they have all this to pull from, and they know that these are the data points and the information and the points of connection that will resonate with their audience. And if you have If they have more than one target audience, you can put them both in this document if some of them sort of converge in different places, or you would just have one brand script for each audience so that you can have all the documentation showing how you should speak differently to each group of people in order to connect with them in the most compelling way and build that relationship and build that know, like, and trust factor. All right, so I went way over. I feel very passionate about this, but I hope that is helpful in explaining the Storybrand framework and how we apply it and how it's incredibly helpful no matter what the marketing strategy or marketing tactic is. It is a fundamental of every kind of content marketing. Thank you.